investing in. When the feeling is mutual, when both parties are really excited, when there's like these little moments of magic.
Today, I wanted to talk more about Godzilla. Before I get started, I wanted to thank you guys, those of you who are newly subscribed, all the love that I got on my Godzilla -1 video. If you're new here, I appreciate you. And let's get started on this topic. Today, we're going to be talking about a movie that is pretty controversial in the Godzilla fan base, and that is the 1998 American Godzilla film. I grew up with Godzilla being around the house because my dad is a major Toho Godzilla fan, his whole life really. By the time that the teaser trailer for the American 1998 Godzilla came out, they played it before Men in Black. The marketing was really neat. I think we could all agree that there was a huge, especially for those of us who remember it, remember the hype that went into this film. It was the first American Godzilla, and you know, there's a whole history behind this. They had been trying to do this since like, I think the 80s. It never worked out, but it was finally happening. And then the movie came out and I saw it in theaters. I was obsessed. Bear in mind, I was 7 years old. Or I was like maybe 6 turning 7. I can't remember what month it was released. If it came out after August, then I was 7 years old. Yeah, so I mean, I remember being obsessed with this movie and thinking that it was amazing. I was a kid, so at that point, I'd watch all of my dad's copies of the Toho Godzillas, and I would like rent different ones that he didn't have. By the time Godzilla 2000 came out, I was all caught up. But back to Godzilla 98. It was, I started to kind of realize the cracks in the armor there even as a young kid. In 2000, I was 9 years old. And even by that point, I remember being like, none of these Godzillas look like the one in the American version. So as we all could possibly imagine, Toho was not particularly happy with the American Godzilla. It did not pay tribute to it at all. It kind of changed everything about Godzilla. You know, there's like, we're doing our own take on Godzilla. I'm like, if a movie says that they're doing their own take on a previously established IP, 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be shit. And we've seen that with so many franchises. Oh, well, we're doing a different take on the character. No. So needless to say, Toho was not a fan. And when, I think it was 2003. 2003 is when the rights expired from TriStar, and Toho obviously took it back. And then they decided to, and this is so shady, I love the amount of shade Japan threw at the Americanized Godzilla. They basically said the American 98 Godzilla took the God out of Godzilla. And so they basically rebranded this version of Godzilla as Zilla, which is hilarious to me. They canonized the character, but they shifted it away from Godzilla to be like, it is canon. This is definitely what, you know, like for what the Monsterverse would call a Titan. It's definitely one of them, but it's just not Godzilla. It's another character. And then what's even funnier, they went through all this trouble to basically reabsorb this character, rebrand the character, call it something else, so that the character Zilla could show up as a villain to Godzilla in Godzilla Final Wars, which was made in 2004. They went through all that trouble just to kill off the character of Zilla almost immediately appearing on film, which is so funny. And not only that, but they made the character look like the worst CGI out of any of the other characters in Final Wars. And it's like they did it on purpose. They're just like really trying to, they're like, we hate this character and we're going to disrespect it in the best way possible. Bravo. Like I said in my last Godzilla video, Japan really knows how to come in here and show America how it's done. They'll show you how to make a movie, and they'll also show you how to have the best sense of humor regarding their own intellectual property that is essentially ruined by Hollywood. I think it's just brilliant. It's so funny. Some of the problems that this production faced, the character redesign. Roland Emmerich, I mean, when he came in, there was already a design that was kind of previously established for this Godzilla film. He's like, no, we want to do our own thing. We want to be different. The 90s was a time where they're really like, we're going to make our own version of stuff. And, you know, this whole idea of paying tribute by trying to stick as closely to the source material as you can is a fairly recent concept. In the 90s, if there was a remake of something or anything of that nature, they basically try to completely do something entirely different with it. All right, I don't want to go into too much of the history because, like I said, I want to keep this video short and sweet. I've got to get out of my office today. I've got a lot of work to do at the new house before we move in. So let me just kind of cut to the chase here and talk about my personal opinion of this film. It's got a lot of problems. It's not faithful to the original. It's very nostalgic for me. And I have been accused by other people when I talk about my opinion of this movie that I'm just wearing nostalgia glasses. And that is true. I'm sure I am. I actually just watched this movie this morning, you know, in preparation for filming this so I could get a fresh view, and I'm really thinking about like the cinematography and the script and, you know, and other things. The script is a little shaky, of course. It's Roland Emmerich. No shade to Roland. Now, let's cut for a second and let's talk about Roland Emmerich. Roland Emmerich is one of those people that I have a love-hate relationship with when it comes to his films. And, you know, when I was younger, I really enjoyed his stuff. But then there was a time, like once I started really developing who I was as a person and really getting into film and how it's made, you know, like maybe when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I kind of wrote off Roland Emmerich as just being like another Michael Bay, as somebody who just, you know, who prioritizes style over substance. And I just never really cared for him after that point. Now, it wasn't until later on when I actually kind of started to develop more of an appreciation for him. And it came from this kind of level of respect that I had found for him later. Now, what is that respect, you might ask? Well, this is what it is. Really what it comes down to is he never compromised on his style. Now, you can watch like 30 seconds of a Roland Emmerich film and you can tell that it's his. He has a very particular style, and it's not necessarily in his cinematography or how things are shot. I mean, let's be real. That's actually, in my opinion, one of his weaknesses. I don't think he really knows how to frame a creative shot. His films are very just formulaic in the way they're shot, like they're just like any other movie. There's nothing special about his camera work. But he has a very particular style in the way that he writes and the way that he builds characters and tension with these big disasters that are happening. He knows how to write a disaster movie. That's why he's known as the master of disaster in Hollywood. Like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with him because, one, his cinematography is mid, but he never compromised. He's always unapologetically himself when it comes to his films. And I respect that because that's exactly how I like to be. I'm not going to change the way that I make movies because other people want me to. I have a particular style that I like to stick to, and that's what I like to do. And this is what he likes to do. So what does that have to do with Godzilla? I would argue that Godzilla is actually one of his better films. The tension it builds, and there's a sense of urgency with the pacing, and it just feels right. You feel exactly how you're supposed to feel in a movie like this. While there are other movies that he did that just missed the mark. Like there's one movie in particular that I absolutely despise, and I will always think is one of the worst movies ever made, and that's 2012. Independence Day Resurgence. I mean, most people will say that Roland Emmerich's films are just not good. I would argue and say that they are just quintessential him. And if you accept him as a filmmaker for what he is, you'll enjoy his films a lot more. And once I made that realization, I was able to go back to Godzilla and say, you know what, I actually enjoy this. I might not enjoy it as much as the MonsterVerse films. The MonsterVerse films have their issues too. Just like the Godzilla 98 has its issues. It just so happens that the MonsterVerse, the strength of MonsterVerse is really how well it pays tribute to the original, while 98 does not. And I think that's the beef a lot of people have with it. I enjoy it when I watch it, and I actually find myself watching that one more often than I watch the MonsterVerse ones. Even though I like the MonsterVerse ones more, I find myself watching the 98 Godzilla quite often. So yeah, I'd say I like the movie. I think I do. So thanks guys for bearing with me during this move. I know it's going to be a little wonky, but once the move is done and Christmas is over, we'll get back to the swing of things, and I'll have a lot more interesting videos that are coming your way where I'm going to be talking about some really cool stuff, and I'm excited. Thanks guys. I'll see you next time. For those of you who whatever holiday you celebrate, happy that. I'll see you guys in the next video.